It's gonna come crashing down.
And when it does,
don't you think comedy's gonna fucking die again? Just
it's an
die.
Yeah.
And people are gonna be like, we're not, do something else.
Yeah, I'm done.
Of course.
I'm done.
I believe many of us feel that way.
I'm getting like a 1990 Sunset Strip hair metal vibes out of comedy.
Like the floor is about to fall out.
What are these comedians talking about? Stand-up comedy is bigger, more profitable, and more popular than it ever has been in the history of the art form, but it's all about to come crashing down. There are 3 glaring signs that stand-up comedy is dying right before our eyes, and no one's talking about them. By the end of this video, you'll be just as shocked as I was when I noticed what is about to happen to stand-up comedy. Now, at first glance, asking a question like, is comedy dying, seems like a ridiculous thing to ask. There are more arena-filling comedians working today than ever before. Comedy podcasts and live shows like Kill Tony are selling out gigantic venues like Madison Square Garden and the Forum in Los Angeles. It seems like everywhere you look, there's an excited crowd of some size waiting to watch live stand-up. It almost seems like comedy has no limit, like it's never gonna stop growing. Does that sound familiar?
It was another case of whiplash. The markets haven't been this volatile in almost 80 years.
The Dow plunged nearly 680 points today. It's official, we are in a recession.
If recent history has taught us anything, it's that whenever an industry seems limitless and ever expanding, it's probably about to completely implode. In the early 2000s, the dot-com crash happened after seemingly unlimited growth in the stock market. And in 2008 and 2009, we had the Great Recession and the crash of the mortgage market after it seemed like that couldn't get any bigger. Now look, stand-up comedy isn't an investment, a stock, or someone's home. And also those industries had a bunch of fraud internally that I'm not gonna get into in this video, obviously. But my point is, whenever something seems like it can't stop growing and people talk about it like it's this thing that's never gonna stop supplying success to people, that usually means the party is almost over. Now, if you're a big comedy podcast nerd like me, you've been hearing a lot of disturbing things that comedians have been saying on those podcasts lately.
I get a little worried right now because I'm getting like like 1990 Sunset Strip hair metal vibes out of comedy.
Like the floor is about to fall out.
It's pretty bloated.
Yep.
It's not all great.
Nope.
And how long before the populace is like, I'm just not into this anymore. I still like some hair metal. I think there's legitimately good bands within that genre, but nobody touched it because the whole thing got poisoned. It was toxic, you know.
Karaoke replaced comedy. So there's where we're at.
Don't you think comedy's gonna fucking die again? Don't you think it's gonna, like what happened to metal, just fucking, we're just gonna oversaturate, fizzle it out.
Yes, that's
and
inevitable.
It's just gonna
it's inevitable.
die.
Yeah.
And people are gonna be like, we're not, do something else.
Yes.
Let's go do trivia.
You're right. But no, I think you're exactly right. I think it's gonna bust at some point. People are gonna get tired of it and people are gonna want to go to something else. And then there's gonna be a huge shift of people to whatever that other thing is.
If there is a big comedy bust coming, it wouldn't be the first time it happened. If you don't know, in the 1980s, stand-up comedy experienced its first boom ever nationwide and worldwide. Stand-up comedy clubs opened up everywhere because it was the latest fad, the latest trend. It got to a point where there were so many comedy clubs and so many comedians performing everywhere all the time that it reached a saturation point and people got tired of it. And here we are in 2024, back at a point where stand-up comedy and stand-up comedy related shows have reached a pinnacle of their performance. Let's go back to what comedians Dan Soder and Stavros were saying about how they think stand-up comedy will eventually completely bust out.
Comedy's great right now.
Comedy's great, but it's gonna come crashing down.
And when it does, sure, we'll still do it.
Of course.
But where do we pivot to make our money? Where's our money maker? I think I would want to do, if I could, I'd probably want to do a weed business. Only a couple of our friends have gotten car dealership. Nate Bargatze.
Right. Nate could have a car dealership.
Shane at this point.
Yep.
Don't be gay. Buy a car.
Yeah. What are you gonna ride public transportation like you're from France, dude?
He goes, that's gay.
That's
Buy
gay.
a car.
Now, this isn't the first time that Dan Soder has predicted that there was going to be a big bust in comedy. A little over 5 years ago, he used to be a regular on Robert Kelly's You Know What Dude podcast. Very big fan. Awesome podcast. Check it out if you can. It's one of the best comedy podcasts out there, in my opinion. Dan Soder used to be regular on there, and before the pandemic happened, he used to predict all the time that stand-up was in this huge boom going into 2018 and 2019, and it was all about to come crashing down back then. Now, obviously, the advent of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic prevented all that because everybody was forced to go back inside pretty much everywhere in the world, and people missed that connection of going out and doing things, watching live performances like stand-up. Now that the novelty of being out and about again has kind of started to wear off into 2024, Many professional comedians are predicting that's going to trigger an upcoming bust. This is what comedian Nick Mullen said when he was on the Tim Dillon show at the end of last year.
The second that stand-up doesn't make sense money-wise anymore, I'm done.
Of course.
I'm done.
Do you think we live in this world forever?
No, I think it's a fad to a certain degree. I think honestly stand-up is really hot right now, and all the podcasters are touring right now and doing stand-up, and that's going to cool off for a minute.
People discount like how much of this is also just like the pandemic prevented people from going out and doing anything.
Now people are out.
And the craziest thing about a possible... Hold on, someone's at my door.
Hi.
God damn it. Don't you hate that? One of the most shocking indicators that things are changing in the world of comedy happened earlier this year. Just for Laughs, an iconic comedy festival that has historically featured a lot of new talent and has been an annual staple of stand-up comedy and the comedy industry, announced that they would be canceling their 2024 festival because they would be filing for bankruptcy. Regardless of what happened there, it is a pretty shocking warning sign that things are changing in the industry of comedy. This opinion about an upcoming stand-up comedy bust is met with a lot of opposition from other veterans in the industry. I received probably the most important reassurance that there might not be a stand-up comedy bust coming up from an industry professional that I know very well. I'll get to that in one moment. But like I said, you can always hear Joe Rogan talking about how he doesn't think there will ever be a stand-up comedy bust, and it's something that people will always want to go out and see. He's been in the industry a long time, so that is his opinion. And also, even if there is a comedy bust, I'm not saying that every single comedy club in the world is going to close its doors forever. I'm just saying that a lot of comedians are saying that the trend of stand-up and the popularity of it might fall into the background. Kind of like the volume of the music in this video. If I turned it up really loud, the idea is that it will get turned down very low to the point where you don't have to yell anymore because the volume's low. Now the music is at a volume where you can still hear it, but it's more faded into the background. That might be how the stand-up comedy bust looks if and when it happens. But if I'm being honest, I really think people are gonna look back on 2024 several years from now and say, oh yeah, remember when that thing was popular? Hey, we'll see. Maybe this video will be drowned and didn't age well. God, you suck. I'm so glad you quit comedy comments in 5 years. Time will tell. But back to the prediction I received from an industry professional about the future of comedy. Larry Marks, former owner-operator of the Looney Bin Comedy Club in Oklahoma City, once told me while I was on the road that after World War III is over and the nuclear fallout clears, people will show up and want to watch stand-up comedy. Now, one of the missing pieces in this video is how much comedians are actually making during this comedy boom, and that's what I cover in this video right here.